Here I am, Andy XL, back with another NFXL podcast. Just 11 hours till the season gets underway now. And I thought I'd have a quick look at the potential MVPs for this season. That's generally one of the major conversations that builds through an NFL season is who is going to be voted the season's MVP. So in this podcast, I will look at my top candidates to win that honour this coming season. Those that have got accustomed to my analysis of the NFL will know that I put a lot of weight behind what past events have told us. And in this case, that means unless you're a quarterback or maybe a running back, you pretty much have no chance of winning this particular award. This century in the AP poll, quarterbacks have won the award 21 times and running backs 4 times. In the writer's version, there have been 19 quarterback winners and 6 running back winners. But one thing they all share is that all the winners have been clearly the biggest offensive contributor on their team. So when looking at the contenders for the regular season MVP of 2025, we need to identify the quarterbacks that are singularly vital to their team's success, and for running backs, the guys that are more important on their team than their own quarterback. The other crucial thing they need is to be seen as the main man in taking their team to the postseason as a minimum requirement. Players on teams that do not make the postseason do not win the MVP. On that basis, I'm ruling out players from the following teams as either being highly unlikely to provide a standout quarterback or running back on their roster or not going to make the postseason, maybe even both. So if you're thinking a player from any of these teams could win MVP, I'd suggest otherwise. Those teams being the Carolina Panthers, Chicago Bears, Cleveland Browns, Dallas Cowboys, Jacksonville Jaguars, Las Vegas Raiders, LA Chargers, Miami Dolphins, Minnesota Vikings, New England Patriots, New Orleans Saints, both New York teams, the Giants and the Jets, the Pittsburgh Steelers, Seattle Seahawks, and Tennessee Titans. And I might add the Green Bay Packers in there until recently. So that's half the league ruled out if I include the Packers in the possibles. Um, so, well, no, I'm going to discount the Packers. So that leaves 15 teams who could provide the league MVP in 2025. I will look at the most likely candidates from those 15 teams. Now, this is a long shot because I actually don't think they'll make the postseason, but the Atlanta Falcons. And for me, that would be Bijan Robinson. With Michael Penix about to start his first full season as a starting quarterback in Atlanta, he's pretty unlikely to put up the kind of numbers required to be a contender for MVP. And that could leave the field open for Robinson to be a long shot to win the award in 2025. Robinson was the third highest rushing running back last season and one of only 6 running backs to record 14 or more rushing TDs last season. Add his abilities as a receiving back, and he is rapidly establishing himself as the best offensive talent on the Falcons roster, probably by far. So if he can get to 2,000 scrimmage yards and north of 15 overall TDs in 2025, and somehow that squeaks the Falcons into the postseason, he could well get votes to be MVP. On that measure, he didn't come up far short of that last season with 1,887 yards and 15 touchdowns. So Bijan Robinson's a long shot from the Atlanta Falcons. Then we come to the Arizona Cardinals. I see their division as a very tight 3-way battle. And if they're going to get to the postseason and if they're going to do anything in the postseason, I've said before, that means Kyler Murray has to have a really good season. So whilst I'm far from being Murray's biggest admirer, it has to be said that if he took the Cardinals make postseason, Murray will need to have a strong season. With the Cardinals not having a great running back or a great receiving core, Murray would get plenty of plaudits for whatever the Cardinals achieve in 2025. Has to be said, he's never passed for 4,000 yards in a season and never passed for more than 26 TDs in a season. If he were to get to the 4K mark and 30 touchdown mark this season, whilst having another 500-yard, 5 rushing TD season, that would mark a career year for him and earn him some MVP attention. Now, the first real big candidate, Lamar Jackson from the Baltimore Ravens. Despite the arrival and efforts of Derrick Henry, Jackson continues to be the guy for the Ravens. With Henry not getting any younger, Jackson will likely be the Ravens' best shot at having the MVP in 2025. But the more good seasons he has, the harder it is for him to seem to do something even more special. Another divisional title and top seeding for the Ravens in the AFC, would be a good start. And if he repeats his 4,000 passing yards of last season with 35 or more passing touchdowns, plus 700 rushing yards and 5 or more rushing TDs, that would make Jackson a major MVP contender again in 2025. On to the Buffalo Bills and another perennial contender, Josh Allen. Allen was the other winner alongside Jackson from 2024, and with a limited array of receiving talent and lacking a truly elite running back, Allen will be the Bills' best hope for MVP honours again in 2025. Like Jackson, the more seasons of excellence he delivers, he in some ways raises the bar for himself in order to get the attention required to win an MVP. Although he had fewer than 4,000 passing yards and less than 30 passing touchdowns last season, he still won the AP award on the back of his rushing numbers and the Bills' overall record. That could mean the Bills needs another AFC East divisional title win, plus him to go back over 4,000 yards and 30 passing TDs, whilst going over 500 yards and 10 touchdowns on the ground. He must go into the season as one of the favourites to win the MVP again in 2025. Right, on to another one who gets mentioned every year, Joe Burrow of the Cincinnati Bengals. Burrows is in that conversation every year, but he's more reliant on his undoubted passing abilities than the likes of Jackson and Allen being dual threats. What also hurts him is the comparison to those two in the array of receiving talent available to him that is not available to them, meaning he needs to be seen as well clear of them as a passer to get ahead of them in MVP voters' eyes. Bengals' record in recent seasons has also hurt his cause, so he may have to lead the Bengals to the AFC North title to get ahead of Lamar Jackson, in particular from the Ravens, in voters' eyes. And in do so, probably in his case, needs to go over 4,500 passing yards and exceed 35 passing touchdowns to be seen as a real MVP contender. If you put up those sort of numbers and the Bengals took the divisional title from the Ravens, that probably puts Burrow ahead of Jackson in the race. Well, it would put him ahead. Next one up, again, this would be more in the dark horse category, literally, as a Denver Bronco, and that's Bo Nix. Nix may have had a fine rookie campaign, and with no stars on the Broncos offensive roster, he would be their best hope of providing the league MVP in 2025. But that would need another big step forward from him. He had fewer than 4,000 passing yards and less than 30 passing touchdowns in 2024. At least 4,035 would be the required plus going over 500 yards on the ground with 5 rushing TTs. That would be a huge step forward for Knicks. And if that led them to at least a wild card again, Knicks would have an outside shot at MVP honours. And the divisional title ahead of Pat Mahomes and the Chiefs would certainly get people talking about Knicks. Next up, the first team I'm naming 2 players from are the Detroit Lions, and they'd be Jared Goff and Jahmyr Gibbs. I put both these guys in as Goff went over 4,500 passing yards and 35 touchdowns last season. It was just his penchant for batches of interceptions that really hurt him as an MVP candidate. When I say just, that's a big just. If he could cut out those bad games, again a big question, and be seen as a real match winner on a super strong Lions roster, he could be a dark horse MVP candidate in 2025. With Gibbs, clearly the platoon leader at running back for the Lions, but in order to be an MVP candidate, must be the clear and undoubted dominant running back for the Lions. Sonic, in his case, had 1,412 rushing yards and 16 rushing TDs last season, whilst his compatriot Knuckles had 750 yards and 12 touchdowns. If Sonic Gibbs can take some of those numbers from Knuckles Montgomery to get above the 2,000 scrimmage yards and close to 25 touchdowns, that might get him into MVP contention. But both of those are probably dark horses at best. On to the Houston Texans, and that would be CJ Stroud. Bit like Bo Nix, a young quarterback trying to elevate himself into the elite group of NFL quarterbacks, having dipped under 4,000 passing yards and had just 20 passing touchdowns in 2024. He needs to take a big leap up to 4,500 passing yards and 30 passing TDs, whilst leading the Texans to a high postseason seeding to get him into the MVP discussion. Next one up, and this is the first team where I've gone running back only, and that's the Indianapolis Colts. Well, looks like Daniel Jones is going to start the season at quarterback, but how long a lead is he going to have? And really, is he the type of player that's going to do anything? And the same with Anthony Richardson. So Jonathan Taylor is the clear standout candidate from the Colts, and that's because there's no quarterback contender on the Colts roster. And Taylor being a back capable of averaging 100 rushing yards a game is another outsider for the MVP in 2025. Firstly, though, he needs to stay healthy, which has been a problem for him in his career. He's only managed to do that in one of his 5 NFL seasons to stay fully healthy. Then the Colts would need to surprise many by making the postseason. So there's 2 big ifs there. If both those things happened and 1,700 rushing yards and 15 rushing touchdowns came Taylor's way, he could get some MVP votes. Next up, another one who with any sort of season gets into the conversation every year is Pat Mahomes of the Kansas City Chiefs. Another perennial MVP contender, like I say, who needs firstly to match his own efforts of previous seasons. So a bit like Jackson and Allen, he's raised the bar for himself, and he needs to meet those standards to even draw attention, really. So he needs to lead the Chiefs to another highly successful regular season to contend in 2025. That probably means a 4,500 passing yard, 35 passing touchdown season, and 13 or more wins for the Chiefs. That's probably the bar that he has to get to if he's to get himself back into the MVP race this season coming. Right, next up, LA Rams, Matt Stafford. Given the quarterbacks he has to get past as an aging veteran and a pass-only quarterback, potential Hall of Famer, which I've been told to call him by a friend of mine, Matt Stafford, will need a near career best year and the Rams to make the postseason off the back of his efforts to push himself into MVP contention. He's only thrown for more than 4,500 passing yards 4 times in his 16 years in the NFL and has only passed for 35 touchdowns twice in that time. He will likely need to do both of those again in 2025 to have any shot at winning the MVP, something he did in 2011 and 2021. Philadelphia Eagles. Again, you could make Jalen Hurts is Super Bowl MVP, but really, we're talking about Saquon Barkley here. I've gone for Barkley over Hurts, and Hurts is not seen as an elite quarterback generally, doesn't put up elite quarterback numbers through the season. Just a good one on a very good team is what you'd say about Hurts. Barkley, however, has thrust himself to the top of the NFL running back mountain after an extraordinary 2024 season. With well over 2,000 scrimmage yards and 15 touchdowns to his name last season, if he could somehow repeat the yardage but add to his TD haul, that means him getting some touchdowns away from the brotherly shove and Jalen Hurts, he could be an MVP candidate of note in 2025. San Francisco 49ers, Christian McCaffrey, similar to Barkley, have gone for him over Purdy for similar reasons regarding Purdy as for Jalen Hurts. McCaffrey, like Jonathan Taylor, needs to avoid injury to be an MVP contender. There's a slight cloud now that Brian Robinson's in town as well. Is he going to take some of the numbers away? And as he averages less than 12 games a season across his 8-year NFL career, that has to be a big question about McCaffrey as the 29-year-old veteran running back. He has still averaged over 80 scrimmage yards a game for the last 2 seasons, but did fail to record a touchdown in his 4 games last season. So he will really need to turn back time and get back to the 2,000 scrimmage yard and 20 touchdowns of his 2023 season to have any chance of being a viable MVP candidate. Right. I have this guy as my best outside candidate for MVP this year, and that's Baker Mayfield of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So I was interested to see Bucky Brooks share that view in a recent NFL.com article. So I'm not alone in thinking this. When you bear in mind I've mentioned other leading quarterbacks need to get to 4,500 passing yards and 35 passing TDs to be an MVP contender, it is noteworthy that Mayfield recorded 4,500 yards and no fewer than 41 passing touchdowns last season. Admittedly, those were both career highs, and he still has a Goff-like interception tendency to overcome. But with an even more loaded receiver core at his disposal for 2025, and I think the Bucks have a pretty loaded all-round roster, Mayfield could emerge as the leading MVP contender if he reduces those interceptions, and the Bucks have as good a season as I think they could well have. They're my Super Bowl tip. So if they're going to go like that, then Mayfield is the leader of the pack for them, and watch out. Could be worth a bet. Washington Commanders finally, and that's Jaden Daniels. Daniels will need to improve his passing numbers in the same way as I specified for Knicks earlier. But if he does and repeats his Lamar Jackson-esque rushing numbers from 2024, that could lead the Commanders to challenge the Eagles for the NFC East title and put Daniels into the MVP discussion for sure. So they're my candidates from each team and the reasons why, statistically, historically, that they might be the ones to look at. Now, all of those, I've got 16 candidates here, and I've ranked them from 1 to 16, and I'll do it in reverse order just for fun. 16 Christian McCaffrey, 15 Jared Goff, 14 Bo Nix, 13 CJ Stroud, 12 Matt Stafford, 11 Jonathan Taylor, 10 Kyler Murray, 9 Jamar Gibbs, 8 Bijan Robinson, 7 Jaden Daniels. Now, I think they're all potentially long shots to win it, but the top 6, I think, are the ones that really are the ones I I would expect the MVP to come from one of these. In all honesty, number 6, I've got the only running back in this top 6 is Saquon Barkley. Again, like I say, if he puts up numbers like he did last season, and the Eagles have another strong run, then he's going to get, you can't ignore him. Baker Mayfield have put at 5, but like I say, I really think if he can cut out the interceptions, he's on a really strong team this year, and that has to give him a great chance. And then the top 4 are the normal 4 that we might talk about. Joe Burrow at 4, Pat Mahomes at 3. Yeah. And boring as it is, Josh Allen 2 and Lamar Jackson 1. They were the guys from last year, and nothing much has changed in their world ahead of this season. So they've got to be the strongest candidates. But, you're not going to get any great respect by picking them because they're the ones you'd expect to have. But Baker Mayfield, if he did it, I'll be coming back and telling you all about it. So that's how I see the MVP for the 2025 season ahead of the season getting underway. I'm going to come back with a week 1 preview very shortly, but that's my views on the MVP. See you soon.